video, we'll review analyzing the external environment of the business model, the creation of strategic scenarios, and strategic transformation options for the business within these scenarios. You will already be familiar with the use of the business model canvas designed by Alexander Osterwalder to analyze existing businesses. In Osterwalder's words, a business model describes how a business creates, delivers, and captures value for itself and for its customers. What you may be less familiar with is conducting an analysis of the external environment of the business. In business model generation, Osterwalder suggests a list of disruptive trends and forces the business strategist can investigate for relevance to the business. There are many external trends and forces. Not all are relevant to a specific business or in the same way. Understanding disruptive trends and forces acting on your business enables the strategist to consider how these might benefit or negatively impact the business and what could potentially be done. We start by considering key trends. Technology includes hardware, software, and bioware. An example is additive manufacturing, also called 3D printing. Additive manufacturing has developed over the years from an interesting curiosity to being applied in many industries, from rocket booster parts to printing buildings and even printing meat. All applications, however, are niche, small scale, or very experimental. As exciting as additive manufacturing might be, the question is it a relevant technology to your business? Regulatory trends refer to laws and other regulations. Governments frequently amend or add laws to try and ensure that desirable behaviors are encouraged and undesirable behaviors discouraged or even punishable. For example, in 2003, the EU passed into law the Waste Electrical and Electronic Equipment Directive. The directive made all producers selling such equipment in the EU responsible for take-back, recycling, and the environmentally friendly disposal of the equipment. Societal and cultural trends are more difficult to identify, but two examples might help. First, in Western nations, the previous decade has seen the increasing political divide between socialist and conservative, the left and the right. Second, arguably, citizens across developed economies are increasingly individualistic, focused on personal rights versus the focus on duty to country that preceded the Second World War. Socioeconomic trends refer to demographic changes such as wealth and income distribution, the percentage of disposable income households have, spending and savings patterns, age within the population, and urban versus rural habitation. Next, market forces, and forces is simply another word for trends. First, consider developments in market segments. Are new customer segments emerging? New segments with different needs and wants than existing customer segments. Within existing customer segments, the segments you are currently serving with your value propositions, are there changes in needs and wants of these customers? Next, market issues. Market issues is another of those vague concepts. Are there issues affecting the customer landscape? For example, is there a rapid price rise for consumers? Switching costs refers to the cost to customers to switch between competitors. For example, what is the cost to switching from an iPhone to an Android-based phone like a Samsung? If you're a real Apple user, the cost is the Apple ecosystem. The familiarity with the way the operating system works, the apps you use, and not to mention the cost of buying a new device. Revenue attractiveness refers to developments in pricing power and profit margins. Can customers easily find, purchase, and switch to cheaper products and services? Then revenue attractiveness is likely to be lower in future as red ocean competition dynamics gets its teeth into your market. Can value still be added that customers pay a price premium for? Then revenue attractiveness is likely to increase in the future. Macroeconomic forces are likely to apply to most, if not all, businesses in the same way. For example, when global market conditions are in recession, some businesses, such as debt collection, fare really well, while others, such as car sales, fare poorly. Capital markets refer to the ease of getting capital in your market, that is money, loans, or other forms of credit. And what is the cost of that capital? As of 2020, the cost of borrowing is incredibly low because central banks price interest low, even negative for the first time in history. But part of the financial crisis of 2007 was as a result of banks not wanting to lend money because they needed everything they had to keep themselves going. That led to a sudden contraction of capital markets, and the capital left available was quite pricey. Commodities and other resources refer to commodities like oil and resources like labor. How easy and at what price is it to obtain what you need to execute your business model? How dependent are you on specific commodities and resources? For example, if you are a rechargeable battery producer, then there are certain key rare earth metals you require that are quite scarce. You can combine this with technology trends. For example, are there technological developments which mean that these rare earth metals will be less important through a different battery technology? Lastly, economic infrastructure refers to everything in a country or region that facilitates economic activity. Education, roads, transportation, internet networks, power networks, taxes, public services, quality of life, market transparency. This is a very broad category. Industry forces include the supply side and competitive rivalry. Who are your competitors? Are there many or few? How big is relative market share? What are competitors' competitive advantages? How does your value proposition compare with theirs? Which customer segments are they focusing on? What is their cost structure and how does it compare to yours? How do they earn money and what are their profit margins? New entrants looks at how many new competitors enter the industry. High revenue attractiveness of customers will attract more new entrants. Substitute products and services refer to propositions that can replace your own. How much do they cost? How easy are they to acquire or access? Suppliers and other value chain actors looks at the key suppliers and value chain actors your business model depends on. How great is the dependence? How dependable are the relationships? How at risk are these businesses? Finally, stakeholders such as employees, governments, lobbyists, how much influence do they have? This concludes the whirlwind tour of the business environment. Not a small task by any means. Having conducted this is, however, the first part of the analysis. We aren't after merely knowing what disruptive trends are. What we really want to understand is how disruptive trends could affect the business. What we want to understand is the way the trends might enable strategic options for the transformation of the business. By extrapolating how a trend might evolve and how the business might proactively respond through certain activities like research and development, business process engineering, public relations, and management innovation, companies can influence trends and actively mold them. Scenario planning is an old tool in the strategic thinker's toolbox that is useful for exactly these complex, ambiguous, uncertain situations. Environment analysis generates way too much data on trends. Scenarios reduce the complexity, if not the ambiguity and uncertainty, by making selections of the most important relevant trends. To create a scenario, start by creating a simple matrix. Each axis represents one trend. The ends of each axis represent the opposites of the trend. The minus side represents the status quo of today, or less than today. The plus side represents the trend as it gets more than today. We'll limit the time frame to 5 years in the future. Once you have selected key trends for the scenario, you can describe the world as it will be in 4 scenarios, should the trends evolve in the way you predict. Give each scenario a label and write a short story describing the state of the world in each scenario. For example, 2 trends important to the car manufacturing industry are additive manufacturing and the availability of lithium, a key battery metal. Additive manufacturing might remain niche or get increasingly mainstream applications, replacing incumbent manufacturing processes. Lithium, in turn, may become scarce and more expensive, or availability and price might remain stable. In the plus future scenario, additive manufacturing has replaced most manufacturing for car parts. As a result, car parts are more integrated and therefore fewer in number. Less steel is wasted and therefore required. Smaller additive manufacturing shops have emerged that are local to assembly demand, meaning factories in low-wage countries have shut down and global supply chains have been significantly cut. Lithium has become very difficult to obtain in sufficient quantities to continue economical battery production. As a result, the price of lithium fluctuates wildly on international markets. A car manufacturer, looking at such a scenario, would need to consider the cost-benefit of manufacturing car parts closer to the consumer, the possibility of printing whole cars rather than assemble, the choice of battery technology for your future fleet of electric cars, and the cost-benefit of investing in R&D yourself for alternative battery technologies. If the plus-plus scenario were to come out, what strategic business model transformation options could you generate? How would the scenario trends affect the 9 building blocks of the business model, separately and as a system? Can you sketch out 3 phases in the transformation of the business model for a car manufacturer within the next 5 years?